Namaste and welcome. Today I will be reading a response to a series of quotes from a book by Gloria Steinem called Revolution from Within, a book of self-esteem. First, before I quote from a book within feminist literature, it is important to say that a true spiritual awakening is beyond all categories and belongs to neither gender. Indeed, I feel that all people naturally embody qualities of both genders. So I enjoyed watching Gloria Steinem and Emma Watson try to find another word for feminism in an interview for Emma Watson's Feminist book club. When they tried to use the word humanism, which sounds more universal, they realized that it means that one does not believe in God, and found it was not suitable. Gloria Steinem often points out the restrictions of women's conditioning, as I will do, and I find it is important that we do not blame men or women or specific circumstances, but instead illuminate unhealthy patterns of relating to each other that we have all grown up with, myself included. Far from complaining, it is healthier to illuminate false patterns before they accidentally turn into prejudice and hate. And I am seeing female leaders today, like Hillary Clinton, begin to directly speak out and point out the possibility that invisible discrimination against women contributed to her loss of the election. I feel that discrimination against women is, in fact, a discrimination against the feminine qualities of life, and a feminine awakening embraces the principle of life that is beyond our control. Therefore, to meet something like ongoing pain or illness, as I have been challenged to do, we must meet it with the feminine qualities of unconditional love, acceptance, compassion, and surrender. Gloria Steinem writes, "As adults, we often try to rationalize the world by asking what we did to deserve some instance of bad luck, violence, humiliation, or even illness. As Susan Sontag wrote in Illness as Metaphor, many theories of disease assign to the luckless ill the ultimate responsibility both for falling ill and for getting well. And we often accept this, for it gives us an illusion of control. As Princeton Mayor Barbara Boggs Sigmund protested in the New York Times shortly before she died of the cancer she had been courageously battling for years, we humans would rather accept culpability than chaos. In my last post, I paid tribute to a young woman who also died courageously battling leukemia in protest. She also quoted Susan Sontag's work in her memoir. Cancer patients are lied to, not just because the disease is, or is thought to be, a death sentence, but because it is felt to be obscene, in the original meaning of that word, ill-omened, abominable, repugnant to the senses. This is the same protest I have quoted from Mother Teresa, who says the biggest disease today is not leprosy or tuberculosis, but rather the feeling of being unloved and unwanted. Our protest is that nothing about our physical form can ever confine or define our spirit. My body is just a body, but my spirit is beyond me, my awakening Sangha sister wrote in her last memoir. When she said this, she protested the common view in society that Gloria Steinem has also highlighted, that as adults we often blame ourselves and each other for our illnesses and misfortunes in order to maintain an illusion of control. Another way of saying this is that we commonly blame the victim instead of recognizing a deeper wisdom in times of pain or trial. And this deeper wisdom is trusting in God's natural flow of life. Instead of turning to fear, we can find strength inside and turn to love. Gloria Steinem writes, as wise women and men in every culture tell us, the art of life is not controlling what happens to us, but using what happens to us. I often reiterate this same pointing from within my own experience of pain. We find that there are things we simply cannot control, and they do not belong to us. In fact, nothing truly belongs to us. If, as in my experience, we find that each layer of your being and your consciousness can vanish before you, if even consciousness itself can leave you, then we find the same confirmation that my sister found. My body is just a body, but my spirit is beyond me. This means that your spirit is beyond the gender of your body. It means that God is always here and lives within and is one with your own presence. But no one told me to tell you that. This experience of pain showed me directly. When I look back on my experience in pain from this illness called Interstitial Cystitis, I realized that more than even suffering the physical pain, I suffered the experience of mistreatment, dismissal, humiliation, and disempowerment for the perceived misfortune of illness, and also the rejection of a form of women's illness that happens to affect the most controversial part of the human body, women's body, the vagina. Like many women, I had a hard time recognizing my own self-esteem, especially within this form of ongoing pain, until the pain itself showed me in an instant that my body is just a body, but my spirit is beyond me. This pain short-circuited the psychological conditioning of fear and shame and pointed me instead back to the source of God within me. And when I rested first within God's embrace, I accidentally found the source of true self-esteem. I find that you can only move with true self-esteem when your esteem is rooted in spirit and not in form. Spirit is the source of all empowerment, because spirit is never overpowered by pain or fear or shame. And I might also say that God is the only one who is not ashamed of your vagina. When your empowerment is rooted firmly in spirit, you see clearly that your body and your form is also deserving of that same divinity. You see through God's eyes that despite your earthly imperfections, God loves all of you, always, perfectly. Strangely, within that experience of great pain, I broke free of the fear and shame of that pain, and the conditioning that we all receive about what it means to embody the female form. This does not mean that I enjoy watching people suffer in pain, or even recommend seeking pain. Pain is not a method. What this means is that I am free to tell you the full truth of what happened, and the implications are profound. The implications are that no matter your form of awakening, a woman's highest freedom is one with women's total equality and empowerment. A woman's awakening is a revolution that starts from within. Gloria Steinem writes in her book, Revolution from Within, hierarchies try to convince us that all power and well-being come from the outside, that our self-esteem depends on obedience and measuring up to their requirements. But there have always been rebels and visionaries who persisted in believing that each person has a center of power and wisdom within, whether it's called the soul or the authentic self, Atman or the spirit. She writes, I think the idea of an inner authority is upsetting to those who are accustomed to looking outside for orders, and certainly to those accustomed to giving them. Moreover, if only outside authority is serious, then any inner experience becomes a frivolous concern. The first step towards self-esteem for most of us is not to learn but to unlearn. We need to demystify the forces that have told us what we should be before we can value what we are. In my own book, The Hidden Value of Not Knowing, I also suggest unlearning what we know and allowing the Spirit of God, the very source of life within us, to move and guide our daily experience. What this means within my own experience is that within this illness I stopped blaming, stopped struggling, and stopped fighting against what I could not control, and instead allowed my experience to rest as it is without judgment. This deep rest did not keep me passive and did not lead me into disaster. It led me into great success and empowerment. It led me to circumstances that were gentle instead of harsh. It led me to people who were supportive and not dismissive. It led me to my compassionate doctor, who never gives up on her patients because she knows this illness does not belong to us. It moved me away from doctors who tried to force treatments that caused more harm than relief. It led to the proper treatments that raised me out of being stuck in bed, and eventually led to circumstances that allowed for proper rest and recovery. It even led me into a rewarding career in renewable energy, and in that career, it led me to break the glass ceiling by daring to speak out instead of sitting down when my work was challenged by those in authority. It led me to my role as a 26-year-old art director in a U.S. government science lab. It led my work to great success when it was posted on the White House social media and this took a matter of months when my colleagues told me that recognition for my work would take years. You know that something is different when your colleagues leave expensive bottles of wine at your desk for no reason, and the director of the lab waits for the honor of being seen walking in with you from the parking garage. You know something is different when you look around a conference table at an important group of men in their mid-50s who hold the title of CEO and are decorated with PhDs. You know that something is different when you see that you are one of only 3 women in that room, and one of those women is serving coffee in a short skirt. You know something is different when you are wearing a suit jacket, sitting as a guest of honor at the conference table, because you are not serving the coffee. You co-created the conference, and everyone listens when you speak instead of staring at your skirt. No one calls you sweetheart. You know something is different when there are offers to fly you to Washington, D.C., to meet with the higher officials who now have oversized posters of your design work hanging on their walls. And you know something is different when that work is being used to transform the future of the United States electric system. You know something is different when there are offers to fly you and your team to the islands of Hawaii to strategize the overhaul of the electric system of the entire chain of islands. You know something is different, and what's different is that strangely you feel like a man. You feel what it must be like to be treated with the esteem and respect of a man, and so you know that you have broken women's conditioning. I should not have to say it this way, because beyond gender, what I saw was what it felt like to be treated equal. Gloria Steinem, in her book, writes about an experience early in her career as a journalist, where she was thrown out of the lobby of a hotel because she was unescorted by a man and was perceived to be a prostitute. Sensing something was wrong and finding the strength of true self-esteem within herself, she walked back into the lobby and demanded to sit there in peace because it was her right as a human and her job as a journalist to be there. She writes, "The truth was that I had internalized society's unserious estimate of all that was female, including myself. When I faced the hotel manager again, I had glimpsed the world as if women mattered." The truth of awakening out of women's conditioning is that when we awaken out of our bodies and into our spirit, we view the world as God truly sees it, that women truly matter. I feel this is of primary importance in all of life, but especially within our spiritual community. Gloria Steinem writes about a group of poor women in India who once dared to enter a holy temple while they were menstruating, even though they had been told they were not allowed to do so because it was unclean. When the sky did not fall and God did not smite them for entering, they broke through the disempowering conditioning that said that women are not holy, and they encountered the source of true self-esteem. Gloria Steinem writes about these women who dared enter the temple, that these least valued of women should inspire anyone, anywhere, female or male, who is devalued so deeply that inferiority seems to be inherent in the reality of her or his own body, whether for reasons of race or appearance, disability or age or anything else. If feelings of unworthiness are rooted in our bodies, self-esteem needs to start there, she concludes. My body is just a body, but my spirit is beyond me, is the hidden value of awakening from our bodies and our conditioning. More deeply, I feel that the hidden value of all of life is to see God's face more clearly as your own face, because I only ever find that God loves all men and women equally. One view I encounter of spiritual awakening is that as a Buddha at the gas pump, we are all equally ordinary and should find healthy ways to use our spirituality to fit into the status quo of society. But another view that I find more empowering is that as a Buddha at the gas pump, we might recognize that we are all equally divine and holy, and that the status quo at this moment in time is not encouraging the female aspect of divinity, not yet fully supporting women's empowerment and full equality. So I feel that by sharing my own awakening, I am working to build a Sangha sisterhood in which women's divinity is taken seriously. How often is a woman's divine presence taken seriously? Do we understand the implications of excluding women from a holy temple for no other reason than menstruating? This is the natural process of the female body, and it implies that being a woman is still a pre-existing condition. Do we understand the protest of a young woman with leukemia who dares tell you from her deathbed that my body is just a body, but my spirit is beyond me? Is having a vagina a barrier to our own divinity? Because if it is, then having 10 years of vagina pain must be the ultimate barrier. And do we understand what it means if we as humanity accept the delusion that having a vagina somehow makes you unworthy, unholy, or held from God in any way, at any time, for any reason? Do we understand the implications of telling a young woman with 10 years of vagina pain that she is stuck or held from God? Do we understand the implications of blaming her for that pain? Because the implication is that it opens a dangerous door to use spirituality to blame any and all women for all kinds of vagina pain. It opens the door to blame women for abuse and rape, which humanity continues to do to this day. And more disturbingly, it opens the door to use spiritual concepts to do so. There is no greater crime than using the name of God to blame women for our existence as women, and especially to make any woman believe that she is ever dirty or unholy. Nothing and no one ever makes my sisters unholy. True enlightenment and true freedom is love, and love dissolves barriers, boundaries, and hierarchies. The pointings for self-inquiry do not make us better and are not meant to control ourselves or others. They are meant to set each other free and love each other more deeply. Gloria Steinem writes, "This quest for universal understanding through self-understanding has been misused to create the uncaring, navel-contemplating stereotype of Eastern philosophies. Even in rich countries, religion, psychoanalysis, and self-help theories have been used to justify passivity and enshrine external injustice. Returning to the concept of circularity and oneness that preceded patriarchy, racism, class systems, and other hierarchies that ration self-esteem and that create obedience to external authority by weakening belief in our natural and internal wisdom, is truly a revolution from within. Whether you are a man or a woman, a feminine awakening is a revolution from within. Compassion is a feminine quality. The Christ consciousness itself is feminine, and so women's divinity should be taken very seriously. We are leading this revolution through our own awakening, and our mantra is, "My body is just a body, but my spirit is beyond me." Thank you, and with so much love.